All right, guys, when it's coming to deals in this little bit of a trying market, I'm seeing a lot of occupancy agreements going back and forth. So you've got two types, right? You got a buyer moving in early before closing, and you got a seller staying after. And it depends on the situation on which one you're gonna be using, right? So, and also depends on which side you're working. If I've got a seller, I would love for them to stay a little bit after closing. That way we know the contract closed and they can move on with their lives at their leisure. With the buyer, sometimes they need to be in the house sooner than they can close on it, and it kind of helps them out if all things equal. But here's the problem with them. Usually somebody gets screwed in the process. What if the buyer moves in and the closing never happens? Well, it's not technically a lease, but is it? What if they didn't want to get out? You can't just call the cops. It makes it really, really awkward. Same thing with sellers. Once sellers get that cash, they have no incentive to be out on time. I've had it several times where sellers have taken their times, gone past the end date, and haven't moved out on time. And honestly, who's at fault? Who has to do stuff? It's really hard to figure out. And our local associations in our state, they actually have agreements for this, but I'm not a huge fan. I think sometimes they're a necessity, but oftentimes they cause more drama and headache than need to be. It's always nicer and cleaner to have a closing, cash, keys, everybody goes their separate ways. But if you have to use these occupancy agreements, make sure you know it well, obviously check with your broker, and make sure all parties are in the know. And the last thing I'll remind you, this needs to be part of the contract if it's part of the deal. If it's not, if it comes up later, you can do it later. But for the most part, you need to have these terms worked out because there's a lot of variables that could bite you in the butt.